It was a family which really recognized that if we were to ever sell the company, the product would be gone because no one will make it the way we make it. And it's left us all with the realization that it's really important we hang on to it if we want to be it out in the marketplace doing what it's supposed to do the way it's supposed to do it.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Beverlee Dacey, president of Amodex Products. Bev, thanks so much for coming on today.
It's great fun to be here. Thanks.
Well, listen, Bev, it's the Made in America podcast. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
What do I make? Well, first of all, what I make is a stain remover.
Yeah.
And because I'm here, that is because it's made in America.
That's right. That it is absolutely made in America. And I think the background, Beverlee, is a really interesting story. You know, you said something to me when we were getting ready for the show that Amodex is a re-startup. And I think that was a really interesting way to put it. So let's talk to the audience. Why do you call Amodex a re-startup?
Well, it's a long story, and I'll try to say this in as short time as I can.
Well, we have plenty of time, so don't cut the audience short, Bev. Let's tell them the deal.
Amodex is a company that was started in 1958, so we're not new. It was started by my parents, and my dad was a printer and encountered all kinds of messy, icky stuff from printer's inks. And he decided to look into a way to get rid of those stains. And he and a chemist friend of his developed Amodex, which is a soap formula. So we're super unique in this niche of stain removers because there is no other soap formula stain remover in the market. And he launched it in 1958, sold primarily to businesses, schools, hospitals, and such. And it was used in the offices where they got a lot of ink-type stains. Over the years, you know, markets change, things change. And what was happening is consumers started asking for the product because they were using it at work, but they couldn't have it at home unless they happened to get a bottle in their handbag or, lunchbox or whatever.
Unless somehow it fell out of the closet and ended up in their lunchbox.
Right,
yeah.
Kind of just showed up.
That's right.
And Dad also, he was getting older and trying to decide what he was going to do with the company. He was actually going to sell it. And
how
this
long
was
ago
this was in early 2000.
Okay.
And he had a buyer and was all set to sell it. And then what happened is the buyer said that he wanted my dad to stay on board for 3 years. And Dad really wanted out. He did not want to give another 3 years. So
he was at the end of the road.
He was done. He was done. And I at the time I've always been in education, higher education. I'm an administrator. And I have two brothers. One is an attorney and the other he's in sales and marketing, and neither of them wanted to take over the business. And my dad wasn't really, he knew I had the wherewithal and the skill set to run the company, but he wasn't sure that women in manufacturing was the way to go.
Really?
So he ended up not selling and not sure what he was going to do.
So when he decided not to sell, did he go back to running it?
He went back to running it, and the business really started to decline precipitously, which is what leads me to the re-startup concept. And the sales were just plummeting. And he got sick, and he got cancer, and he had no succession plan. And so I stepped up and said, okay, I'll leave my job and take over the business. And help take care of my mother and take care of him as well, as long as he was going to be around, which we didn't know how long that would be. And then 4 months after he was diagnosed, my mom got killed by a drunk driver.
No.
So that really changed life for everybody very quickly. And she fortunately had convinced him shortly, about 1 month before her accident, that I should take over the company, and signed over her stock to me.
Really?
And that was her last gift. And I always say she gave me the best opportunity, second to my education, that she ever could have given me. So needless to say, I stepped in at a time when the business was about as low as it could be. I have 4 children. They were all in school, 2 in college, 2 in private school. So I was choking financially and had to think about what were we going to do to really get this business rebuilt, knowing we had a fabulous formulation that had great potential. And I connected with some friends, one who's a graphic designer and another who was in marketing, who basically convinced me to go full throttle consumer market, which we hadn't really done. And we rebranded, we rebuilt the business, we did all the things you have to do when you're starting a company, except that I already had a product. It just needed a facelift and a good push. And so that's what we did.
And there we go on the restart.
And then, yeah, and that is really, it's what you learn is that a business can be fledgling, but with the right tools and resources, you can bring it back and it can really thrive. And my biggest lesson learned from all this is you can't really ride a wave. That every 5 years you have to reinvent yourself. You have to really re-examine what your brand's about, stay relevant, keep abreast of everything that's out there. That was one thing my dad didn't do. He was able to coast for a long time because things didn't change, but that much between the 50s and the 80s. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the world just took off like a rocket ship. And so now, we have to constantly be on top of things.
Yeah, constantly be evolving. So it's an amazing story, Beverlee. What was it like? Your dad changed his mind, or your mom helped your dad change his mind. What was that like when he did have the confidence in you? What did that feel like? How did that conversation go?
It was probably the most touching thing I'd ever experienced, was when he looked at me one day and just said, "I know you're going to make it. You got all the right stuff, Bev." And with that, I got this surge of confidence, knowing that I always knew Mom believed in me, but that he believed in me. And probably the most poignant moment was one day when he came to the company. One of my sons studied engineering here at Trinity in Hartford. And he spent a day with my son teaching him how to formulate the product. And all the innuendos and understanding the machinery. And as sick as he was, it was the most heartwarming bonding moment to see the two of them together. And they're birds of a feather anyway, because they're very similar personalities. And realizing that he saw with that a legacy being built, and that something he and my mom had worked so hard to achieve was going to be passed on not only to me, but to them in that next generation. And as anybody knows about grandchildren are much more important than children. So what I accomplished was one thing, what they're going to accomplish, now that's another story.
That must have been a really amazing thing for him to see, not just past him, but to even be able to see past you, like the next leap forward. That must have been really amazing for him.
Yes, and one, I got a couple of pieces of advice from them that I will share with everybody out there because I think they're really important. One was, you run the business, don't let the business run you. And the other was, don't look at the business day to day because it'll kill you. Let the months go by. It always levels out. And anytime I have those days where I'm thinking, oh, dear Lord, this is not looking good, and there are lots of those, that little voice echoes in my head, and I go, okay, no, Bev, wait till the end of the month before you have a fit.
Exactly. It's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems.
No, not at all. Yep.
So how long was it after you sort of took over when your father passed away? Like how far past into the restart did he see? I
took over in March of 2005, and he passed away in August of 2007. So we had a little less than 2 years together and there were a lot of things I needed still to learn that he helped me with. one good thing about my dad being an engineer, he himself was, somebody who was extremely detailed oriented. So when he was gone, I could still go through his records and his files, and they were encyclopedic. And there was anything and everything I needed in there. And I realized, wow, you know what? Having that history was extremely valuable. And as much as I used to laugh at him for being so anal, it paid off.
Well, listen, it just explains to you, right, from just a business perspective, how critically important organization is, right? You just never know when you're going to have to go get that history, and you never know for what reason. And it's just a great reminder of like how investing the time to be organized can just pay off dividends.
Right. And well, and sometimes too, people don't. People presume when you're a consumer goods manufacturer, particularly here in America today, that somebody else is making the product for you, and you're just the sales and marketing arm. In our case, we are the manufacturer, and one of the most important lessons I had to learn was how to buy material, because all of our material is U.S. sourced, and the records we have on all of our materials, because it is all proprietary, and making Amodex is not easy. It's a lot of work. Was looking at the chain of custody of the materials to make sure that I was always meeting the QA requirements. And that's been a real challenge. Listen,
I absolutely want to get to supply chain and supplier woes, but before we get, I just want to ask something kind of a lead up to that, which is you said that it's the only soap formulation for stain remover. So that actually surprised me. I didn't realize that. So what are the other things if they're not soap?
Most of them are solvents.
Okay.
They're all solvents.
Right. So which would be like when I think of a solvent, I think of like nail polish remover.
Yeah, acetones.
Or like acetones, right.
Yeah, and if you really look at the ingredients, there's always some, as you said, acetone or alcohol or, lots of other materials.
Like abrasive.
Yeah.
Type.
Whereas Amodex, you can drink it. It might deconstipate you. Drink it. So it's very safe. And being a soap formula, you never worry about it coming in contact with your skin.
Right.
And one of the things people don't realize about stain removers is that when you put those chemicals on your fabric, I always tell people, no matter what product you use, always rinse it, even if they don't tell you to rinse it, because you don't want those chemicals sitting on your skin, because your skin then can absorb them, and it's not healthy for us. So, in Amodex's case, it's wonderful because it rinses out. It's a soap. There's nothing there. And you can use it on any fabric. So it doesn't matter if it's washable, dry cleanable, wool, cashmere. It doesn't matter.
None of it matters.
Nope.
So really unique in that aspect. But the challenge with Amodex versus some of these other ones is it's a lot more challenging to make.
Yes. It's extremely tedious. Because of the complexity of the ratios of the formula, because the ingredients are hard to find. Like, what is it about it? Combination of everything.
Okay.
And the way in which it's blended. If you don't blend it right, you end up with a bar soap.
Oh gosh.
Or liquid soap.
That would not be good.
No. So it really takes a lot of focus. We've come to realize that, and we've watched other brands that have been bought out by the big guys. And what they end up doing is they end up reformulating, just for economic reasons.
Yeah, try and save money. Yeah.
And so as a family, we've really recognized that if we were to ever sell the company, the product would be gone, because no one will make it the way we make it. And it's left us all with the realization that it's really important we hang on to it if we want to be it out in the marketplace doing what it's supposed to do the way it's supposed to do.
If you want Amodex out there, you got to do it yourself. Yeah. So that's really interesting. And I know you had mentioned this. I think you mentioned earlier, certainly we've talked about it in the past, that Amodex started off as a soap. It was really about cleaning your hands first. So that's also the other difference, I guess, than some of the other cleaners. It started off as a way to clean your hands and then became a way to clean your clothes as opposed to something that was just really about clothes cleaning. So it's always really had at its core that idea that it's got to be able to come into contact and not do a lot of damage, because that's originally what the purpose was.
And and the coolest thing about Amodex, which I realized about a year or two ago, as we were working on our redoing some packaging, is it suddenly dawned on me that Amodex, because it was formulated for skin to deal primarily with inks, also, though, over time, we learned is a great degreaser. So people were using it for both inks and as a degreaser. And then the more I looked into it, the more I realized that we're the only stain remover that works on 2 types of stains. And people don't realize this, but we get one of 2 types of stains. We either get oil-based stains or dye-based stains. So if you think about oil-based stains, you're thinking about salad dressing, chocolate, sauces.
Pasta sauce,
yeah, all of that. Those are
I got 2 young kids, so I see a lot of pasta sauce stains.
Those are all your oil-based stains.
Yeah.
Cosmetics, those are all. You flip over to the other side. Dye-based stains are things like blood, mustard, turmeric, tomato, the iodines, all hair dye, all that. Those are all dye-based stains.
And at the heart, those are 2 totally different stains.
Totally different. And they require different ways of being treated to get them out. So when you look in the store, you'll see some stain removers will work on some of those stains and some stain removers will work on some of the other stains. We're the only one that works on all of them. And where I realized this was important was because I have 4 kids, and 9 times out of 10 when I did the laundry, I didn't know what the heck they got on their clothes. You know, you'd see grass stains and you'd see food stains and all your pants.
Yeah, who knows?
It was,
any article of clothing could have an oil stain, a dye stain, and any combination of them on top of each other.
Exactly. And you're going, ugh. And you're in a rush. I'm doing the laundry.
What people don't know as you're telling this story is you have 4 kids, but you have 2 sets of twins. So, I mean, you were busier than most pretty frequently. And they're not that far apart, right? So, I mean, it was what? The first set was 3 years old when the second set was born, or roughly that. So you had 4 kids, 3 or younger, all at the same time.
Yeah. And the baby blowout stains, which anybody who has babies is listening to this will know what I'm talking about. Those are the worst because you wash them and then they have a halo.
That's
and you have a nice little white romper they can't wear because they look terrible. Well, I learned Amodex was the best thing for getting that out. Okay. And all of a sudden, all the mommies are saying to me, how are those kids' rompers white and so clean? Are you bleaching them? I go, no, I use Amodex. What the heck's Amodex?
My God, works for everything.
So the whole point here being, though, that we realized our formula is unique in what it is as a soap. Its application is unique because you can use it on both types of stains, which is great for consumers because 9 times out of 10, you don't know what you got on something. And you don't have to worry about your fabric, whether it's silk or wool or cotton. It doesn't matter. If it's washable, you pre-treat, throw it in the wash. If it's dry cleanable, you treat it and rinse it. And that's it.
And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
So that's really fascinating. I mean, 2 things, by the way, that I'm hearing as you say that is, I think oftentimes people pay lip service to how important customers are, but don't always listen to their customers. And it's just really interesting, this thread throughout the story of Amodex, where if you just get close and listen to your customer and you paid attention to it, you can see the different applications, right? It was sold originally to wash your hands. People realized they do it in fabric. It was sold really as a B2B approach to help businesses. And then you realize, hey, consumers want it. You realize it works on these stains and people are using it for something else. It's really fascinating. And I think it's a case study. And if you listen to your customer, so many great things can happen. So.
Well, and Ari, one of the other things that's really important to us is when we moved to our new facility in 2017, we decided that we were going to not have an automated phone system. And the reason we don't is because most of the calls we get are customers with a crisis.
Really?
Stain crisis. Yep. And we spend a lot of time helping them deal with whatever that crisis is. And we want to make sure they get a person at the other end, because you've got the kid who just wrote Sharpie all over the interior of the brand new car. You've got the stories I can tell you. The dog chewed up the pen. It's all over the rug. The stories go on and on and on. And
does it work on like it's just a very, very, very personal question I'm going to ask you, but we had my son got a hold of a piece of paper on our kitchen table. It's like a butcher block, and he got a hold of a permanent Sharpie. And if anyone's ever had a kid, color, not draw, but color on a piece of paper on Sharpie on butcher. Yeah, you move the paper. Guess what? You could see the dragon head in the thing.
You got a silhouette.
Does Amodex take that out?
As a matter of fact, this is funny, and that you brought this up because a couple of years ago, out of the blue, I got a call from Martha Stewart's magazine people asking me if I would send them some Amodex. Turns out the editor was in her office on a Saturday, had her daughter with her, doing exactly what you're talking about. Drawing on with marker, and it went right through on her desk. And her desk was covered with marker. She didn't know what to do, so she called the art department of the magazine, and they said, "Oh, we use Amodex." They're like, "What's Amodex?" So they sent some up to her. She cleans the desk. She was so knocked out. She said, "I want to write an article about this product."
That's awesome.
And that's why they called to ask us to
send more Amodex.
And the one thing that's very cool that we're really proud of is that for well over 25 years now, we've had a relationship with Newell Brands, who make Sharpie and markers and all that kind of stuff. They recommend Amodex for taking out all their inks, including Sharpie. Because we're the only product that, and they laugh going, we tell everybody we make a product that's permanent, and then we tell them, call Amodex when they need to get it.
If it's an emergency, we have the secret weapon.
We have the antidote.
That is awesome. I was actually going to wonder about that, because if you go to your website, there's a lot of like, a lot of times when you see products talking about, oh, we can get rid of permanent ink, you rarely see them reference where the permanent ink come from. So they'll do like, oh, permanent ink marker is very generically referenced, but Sharpie is clearly identified all over your website, so that explains the
I mean, it's right. If you go to their website, how to remove Sharpie, they say
Amodex.
Get Amodex. So for your desk, just coat it with the Amodex, because I actually have a butcher block in my kitchen too.
Yeah.
And I've had to do this, and I'd leave it out overnight, and in the morning just wipe it clean. It comes.
So
right
I wish
out.
I had known this. What we ended up doing was we had someone come in and sand it off and refinish the whole. Yeah, because it was really, really bad. I mean, didn't look. But now in the future, if it happens again, we'll do the Amodex. So let's talk about the pivot. You drove the pivot from B2B to the B2C, and it's just really interesting. You have no manufacturing background, no business background. You're in educational administration, and you come in, and how did you get from, we've been selling it this way for almost a half a century, pretty close to a half century, like 48, 47 years, and you're going to pivot the whole focus of the company. I don't know, where did you, as my grandmother might say, where did you find the chutzpah? Like, how did you find it?
I think, because I have a family and I'm a user, I started realizing how much we could do to help people save money. And it became kind of it wasn't even about building the business. It was about bringing a product to market that I knew people needed. And I just did what was called guerrilla marketing. One of my more embarrassing moments was when I went to the buyer of Stop and Shop supermarket, and I met with him to talk about the brand and what we were doing with it and packaging and such. And he was a new buyer, and he was skeptical, and he kind of looked at me and he said, "Okay, so you said it takes out Sharpie?" I said, "Yeah, it does. Show me." I said, "Okay," so I drew on his shirt.
On his shirt, not even your own shirt. Oh, Lordy. Okay.
And I took out the stain. And of course, needless to say, he was shocked and was like, "Okay, let's talk." But he said to me years later, that was the nerviest thing somebody has ever done.
Yeah.
In all my years as a buyer.
Yeah, very, very. Wow.
And but I have so much confidence in the product that it didn't faze me. And so that's kind of what I've done, going out there and just, it's a show me product. And instead of putting our money into advertising, we put our money into samples. We give out a lot of free Amodex because people are skeptical of stain removers. Yeah. They buy them and they go, "Darn thing doesn't work. Yeah. I'm sick and tired of wasting my money." So we say, you know what? We don't want you to waste your money. We're going to give it to you. Try it. See what you think. And
so so it's great. It's a great, like, it's sort of, to me, it's like almost like an infomercial type product, like you could just see where it is you called it, it's a show me product. So how do you even get someone to use a free sample? Like, I know that sounds weird. A lot of people are like, "What do you mean?" But there's it's very easy to think you can use something free once you know what it is. But there's lots of times that there's people don't even realize it, that there's free samples that you could get many places. When you don't know what something is, you either don't take the free sample or it comes in the package and you don't ever use it because you don't even know what this thing is. So who did you partner with? How do you think about getting Amodex not only out there in someone's hands, but that they actually will use it to make them say, oh, I should buy that?
Well, where we really made a big dent, believe it or not, is when we would go to trade shows. We would not only talk to the people in the industry, who were buyers who were coming through and talking with us about Amodex. I'd make sure everybody who was at that trade show got a sample. Because everybody's a user. Everybody gets stains, whether, even people at the other booths. And it's very rare when you go and give a sample of Amodex for somebody not to go, oh, a stain remover, I can use that. And it's just something we all get very frustrated with. And 9 times out of 10, you're getting a stain on something you love. My favorite Amodex story is this woman who contacted me several years ago. Her daughter had just gotten married. And she calls up and says, my daughter called me just as she was leaving to go on her honeymoon and said, Mom, I've left my dress hanging. It got a little Sharpie on it. Can you please clean it for me? Well, I went and got the dress. She's not talking about a little Sharpie. The whole front of her dress has Sharpie on it. I'm like, what? How did it happen? Well, evidently when she was in a limo, her friends had decorated all the balloons and it transferred onto her gown.
Sure.
So needless to say, now, of course, I'm breaking a sweat thinking, oh, God, I don't want to ruin this woman's wedding dress. But I told her what I would do if that were mine and walked her through it. And about 2 or 3 months later, I get a letter from her. Beautiful multi-paragraph letter describing to me what she did, how it saved the gown. And she said, you've saved my daughter's memory.
Yeah. And
that was it. That, to me, I was like, you know what? That's what it's about.
I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And so what has been the trajectory of, like, how long did it take? You talk about the restart up, and that just connected with me so much because it's, like you said, same product, new market, new marketing. How long did it take for it to catch on once you made the pivot to try and make it a consumer product?
It's probably taken a good 10 years to really get to where we are now. The secret sauce really has been meeting those people who are the decision makers, who get access to the product and try it. Because everybody's skeptical. And that's how we end up getting into Lowe's. I met somebody who was involved with Lowe's and got them some product. They tried it, and then they sent it to some other people, and they tried it. Then all of a sudden, everybody's going, wait a minute, this stuff's really good. And, one thing led to the other. And as you start making those inroads, it grows and it grows. And we, unlike most products in a place like Lowe's, they usually do a test run in 200 or 300 stores to see how you're going to do. They rolled it out into 1,200 stores right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah, and now we're in 1,700 because it's done so well. Because and then of course you're there, and then other people see you and they call you up and I want to bring you in. We were in Container Store. The next thing I know, TJ Maxx is calling saying we saw you in Container Store. We'd like to bring you in. And blah 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 blah.
Right. Success breeds more success. Yeah, you were telling me quintupled sales in the last 6 years. So that's good. How do you? What were some? So you had to rebrand to marketing because obviously you need different packaging when you're selling to business. To business, I assume you're selling much more in bulk. Now you guys have individual wraps. You've got like the little travel bottles. You got the travel sticks. So you've got all those different ways of making it. So there must have been a challenge of making it in more different ways.
We had a series of challenges. The first was accessing the right partnerships for materials.
When you say materials, we're talking about not just the inputs to the product itself.
Nope, I'm talking about our boxes, our bottles, our caps, our corrugated, everything.
Because you must have, just in the consumer market, you must have way more types of packaging than you had previously.
Oh my God, way more.
Okay.
Way more. And you know, we're already busting out of the bloody building because we have so much material now.
Right.
And that's a whole other story because we went from lean to hoarding with the pandemic. So, you know, so yes, we have that issue of
it went from just in time to give it to me all the time.
Give me as much as you can right now. And so, you know, getting and I also wanted very much to source as much as I can from Connecticut. Because I think we small business owners need to help each other. So a lot of my material is provided, all my printing is done by Connecticut printers. And my corrugated, the same thing. So, you know, but finding those companies was not easy. And, you know, getting that ball rolling and making sure the synergy was working wasn't easy. And then we were originally in a facility in Bridgeport that was very small. The offices were in one building. The plant was in a different building, and you had to go out in the winter to go between the two buildings, and it was not pretty. And so I was made aware. We knew we needed to move, but we weren't sure how, because you can't move and shut down your operation. You have to keep going. And long story short, I was made aware of a facility in Bridgeport that the city owned that had been a former police precinct. And they, it turned out it was perfect for us. And then through the state Business Express program, I was able to get a loan that provided enough money for me with what capital I had to be able to buy and start renovating the building. And then eventually we just moved right in. And so we never shut down. And I didn't have to worry about selling the old building to get into the new building. And then with that, we bought a lot of, and through the state MVP program, the Manufacturers Innovation Fund, the voucher program, I got customized machinery that now we can do 3 times what we're doing in production with this machinery. And that was a game changer.
Yeah, so
you know,
important
all
to
of those
find the right place,
Yes.
find the right technology.
Yes.
Sounds like you leverage a lot of those like state programs to really help kind of build and scale the business.
Yes, they've been. What I love about them is that they're matching programs, so you only do them if you have skin in the game, and you want to make sure you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And it's worked. And, you know, it's been it was a huge help to us. We never could have accomplished what we've accomplished without it. And the state's benefiting. You know, city's getting great tax revenue from us. There aren't enough manufacturers in Bridgeport. So, you know, there's a huge benefit there. We employ people part-time and temporary from the city who come in and help us out when we need help. And, you know, the state's benefiting because we're an active manufacturer now, and we're working with a lot of other small companies to help them
build the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, and especially during the pandemic. That was so incredible. And the fact that the governor had the insight to never shut us down was spectacular. I don't know what would have happened otherwise. Because companies like Lowe's, they were one of the few retailers open, and the supermarkets who we sell to, they were also open, and we never missed a PO.
Never. How you mentioned earlier, you've had some challenges with sort of getting your materials. How have you been thinking about that? You know, because you make it's interesting, right? You, like most manufacturers, you make a part of it, but you make the core product, but because you have so many different types of packaging, boxing, whatever, you rely so heavily on other people just to give you the containers that your product goes in. How do you manage that? Has that been a challenge to kind of manage all that?
Yes. And actually, I do a lot of complaining that I spend way too much of my working time dealing with that one issue versus business development. Because so many companies realized with the pandemic that they needed to start sourcing domestically, and there weren't enough players. So companies I was working with were deluged
Because you'd been already sourcing everything here. So now all of a sudden your suppliers are getting deluged because they can't get stuff overseas.
And then there was has been and still is a labor shortage. So, an issue I never had before that has emerged in the last 18 months has been with quality control. My caps, for example, I have lots of issues with my caps, running them through the machine. They are not running right, because they're not being fabricated correctly. And when you contact the manufacturer, it's all because of labor. And so we're having this big dominoes problem that we never saw before. And
well, if it was easy, Beverlee, I guess everybody would be doing it, right?
They're not all as nuts as I am.
What have been some of the challenges in terms of, like, one of the things I thought about is when you're probably selling business to business in that thing, not only is it simpler from a packaging perspective, but I would imagine that the order cycles are probably a little bit more consistent, right? And with consumer products, it's a little bit hard to know when what your sell through looks like. So, Stop and Shop, Lowe's, Container Store, TJ Maxx, whoever orders the stuff, but you don't really know how quickly another order is going to come in, if it's going to be big, if it's going to be small. I bet you're probably also, I don't know if it's seasonal, but maybe there's some seasonality to it where you need to make a lot in the fall or something. I don't know.
It's summer.
Okay.
Summer. Everybody in the United States in the summer is wearing pink, green, white, yellow. Yeah. They're not wearing navy blue and brown and black anymore.
You're outside having a hot dog with the barbecues.
Exactly.
You're getting ketchup. Yeah.
Yep. And then the other part that we have found,
wedding season.
Oh yeah. All of the things that happen in the summer, they're staying heaven.
Got it.
And then the other thing we've learned, which is really kind of funny, is a lot of people are traveling again, and so they're doing rentals, going to the beach for the week, this, that, and the other, and then something gets stained and they need to clean it because they want their deposit back. There you go. I said, and I think, why do we sell so much Amodex on Nantucket?
Big rental deposits. That makes sense. So how do you manage, I think a lot of businesses probably wonder about how do you manage that type of like inconsistent and really hard to predict volume?
We have had enough experience now with those ebbs and flows that we meet every week and look at where we are and where we see things coming, and then we plan. And fortunately, for example, like with this new machinery, we can switch over from filling our big bottles to our small bottles in no time. So
that's where the technology comes into play.
Yes, that is,
because you're not sort of beholden to having either multiple machines, or I can't switch it out till I have to go through this whole process. So I'm really struggling if I get a big bottle and a small bottle order. Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing too is particularly with the supermarkets and box stores, they're really good at letting you know in advance if they're either bringing a new item or going to be doing some kind of promo, so that you make sure you have enough lead time. And so that has helped. But the downside for us too has been that we, particularly during the pandemic, for example, we went from a 8-week delivery for bottles to 24.
Holy cow.
How do you figure out what you need in an order on that kind of a cycle? It was horrendous.
Has it improved?
A little bit. Not as much as I would like.
I'm not back down to 8 weeks.
No. And that's what I think people don't realize out there is what we manufacturers, they go on the shelves and like, why can't I find XYZ on the shelf? There you go. Yeah, because it's become very, very difficult to predict. So it's not, from our manufacturing perspective, we can produce. We can take control of those problems. Where we can't take control is where is the delivery on the materials to us. And so what we're trying to do now is more with blanket orders, so that they will make that material for us and hold it, and then we will just pull as we need it. And you guarantee that you will buy all of that,
right?
But at least then you're not at the mercy of, oh, you mean 12? Not 12 weeks. It's 22.
You got to wait for the capacity. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what's the future? I mean, you've described Amodex as a legacy business. What do you see as the future?
The future is very exciting for me. I'm one of those who pinch myself that I get to see my kids every day. It's sometimes hard to remember that at certain times I'm wearing my president of Amodex hat, and sometimes I'm wearing my mom hat, and making sure those never the twain shall meet, because you can't do that when you're running a company. But you mentioned that about my 4 kids. Life is kind of interesting sometimes. I always wondered why God gave me 2 pairs of twins and these 4 kids. And as they've grown up, what's amazing to me is their skill sets. When you meet them, they're all very different. So my older pair of twins, one is the engineer. His twin can't even use a screwdriver. And, you know, he's my marketing guy. He's the guy who manages the inventory. He's the guy who manages the orders. That's his thing. His brother, the engineer, prefers not to answer the phone. You know, so their personalities and skill sets are very different. The other 2, my other son is a math whiz and an IT whiz. So he does all of the computer stuff, you know, all the financials with our orders and such. He handles all of that. His sister, on the other hand, is as clever as they come, and she's the social media queen, and she works with me on all the new business development. And so I go, how is it that God gives you these 4 really different people? No one wants to step on the other one's toes. They're like, you're great at that, and I stink at it, so you do it. And so what, in terms of succession, it's made that vision so easy for me, because there's this synergy among them and mutual respect for what each does, that they know this mobile will only stay in balance as long as they all get along. That must be so rewarding. It's very rewarding, and it's very exciting, and they're very excited. And I see that they have aptitudes I don't. You know, don't ask me to do social media. I'm out of there. Forget it. It's a great social media product, by the way. You know, any of those Show Me products are great for, I can imagine the endless things you could do on TikTok or Instagram. You're going to love this story. My daughter had a ball a couple of months ago. This was after the Queen passed away. I don't know if you remember, but there was a video that went viral of Prince Charles with a pen in his hand. And he got ink on his hand. And he drops the pen, and he gets a little snarky. And his wife calms him down. Well, this went viral. So my daughter sees this and goes, I have an idea. Send him some Amodex. So she puts a little caption on that thing going, if only Prince Charles had Amodex. And then does a video of us packaging up some Amodex and sending it to Buckingham Palace. And about 6 weeks later, we get a thank you note. And there goes another video. Well, that thing went, I cannot tell you, it was everywhere. The funniest part about it was the big debate among the Brits as to, because my daughter referred to her as Queen Camilla, and no, she's Queen Consort Camilla. Yeah. And so that even went more viral. That's where I go, I'm staying out of this. Don't ask me. No such thing as bad publicity. That's terrific. Listen, what's old is new again, and it's awesome to see a product breathe new life, taking on different stuff, and even going to the next level, like embracing sort of the modern technology to get it out there. It's an awesome story, Bev. Well, and I always like to say to people too, you know, we all get discouraged. I can't. There are lots of days my head is on my desk, and I just don't even want to talk to anybody. But what I've learned through the times now that we're in, and I think it transcends any industry you're in, is the art of pivoting. You never know 1 minute to the next what you have to do, and just be willing to pivot. And if you are, you'll find your way. If you stay too rigid, you're just going to snap. And I think that we've gone through some recessions. 2008 was brutal. I had just taken over the company. It was brutal, but we made lemonade out of the lemon, and that really was an eye opener about how you just have to keep on keeping on, one foot in front of the other. Yeah, and I say that to everybody. Don't get discouraged. And sometimes when you really think it's about as bad as it can be, and I've been there, something really remarkable happens.
Always darkest before the dawn. Listen, I'm gonna flip us over to rapid fire round of questions, then we'll wrap it up. You ready?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Oh, Sox.
There we go. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Starbucks.
iPhone or Android?
I prefer Android, but my kids made me get an iPhone so I can FaceTime when I'm overseas.
Overseas. Staycation or exotic destination?
Oh, both.
Both. There you go. If you had to do something, Beverlee, other than be the president of Amodex Products, what would you do to pass your time?
Oh, I've thought a lot about that. In my other life, and I'm actually doing this. I actually spent a year in Eastern Europe in the 80s. I was a Fulbrighter, and I lived through communism and lived in it for a year. And I have thought a lot that I would go out there and write a book and go on a speaking tour about why America is remarkable and how the opportunity I had with this company reflects all that this country offers, and we have to hang on to it for dear life.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Well, I look forward to watching you do that. Do you have a favorite business book by any chance?
No.
No.
I try not to read business books.
Fair enough. What's something that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
My education. My dad was a war vet, came back. He was actually on a track to go vocation. But when he came back from the war, he decided, no, he wanted to go to college. And he did it. And it wasn't easy. He was an immigrant. And he sent all of us to college, and we all studied liberal arts. And what I got from that were the tools that I think teach you how to problem solve, how to critically think, how to debate, how to find solutions to problems. It's a way of thinking that is indescribable. But I use it every bloody day, and I thank them for it.
That's fantastic. What's something, Beverlee, that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell young Beverlee and she'd listen to you, that'd have a real positive impact on her life?
Funny you say that, because I just had this conversation with my daughter-in-law. And I said to her two things. Stop worrying, because the solutions always find their way. And second, don't give a darn what people think. As long as you're a good person and morally and ethically on the right course, you do what's in your heart. And you use those gifts you have. And when you do, you thrive. And if people are critical of that, that's their problem.
Amen to that.
Do what's
Beverlee.
good. What's going to really make your life rich.
Amen to that. Well, Beverlee, I'm going to leave it right there. It has been absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been just a delight.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.